So thank you again for having me today. My name is Andrew Williams. I am the Deputy State Policy Director for the New York League of Conservation Voters. We are one of the largest environmental nonprofits in New York State that advocates for the whole spectrum of environmental and conservation policies, including in the transportation sector. Transportation is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutants in New York State, which only contributes to climate change but also harms public health. The most effective way to reduce the environmental impacts of transportation is either to reduce miles driven on the road, or to transition to more sustainable forms of transportation, such as electric vehicles. As has been mentioned over and over again by, I think, everyone that's spoken today, one of the biggest hurdles to getting to an electric or a zero-emission transportation sector is range anxiety. We're seeing that, across the board in most places across the state where people aren't having access to the chargers or the charging infrastructure necessary to charge their vehicles, and it does hamper the adoption of electric vehicles, as we've seen across the state. And we are actually lagging behind other states across the country, specifically California, but also in other places like Florida, which has a significantly higher rate of EV adoption than New York. New York has a very robust, geographical diversity, right? We have everything from very densely urban population centers in New York City and Buffalo, and other cities across the state, to very rural and remote areas, such as I grew up in the North Country, and I know some of the members have mentioned here that it's tough to have electric vehicles in the North Country, and we recognize that. So we need to really expand the number of fast charging stations, especially along highway routes, in residential areas, and public locations like transit hubs. And this will help to ease the range anxiety and make it easier for people to adopt EVs. A robust and accessible network also promotes equity, ensuring that even those in rural or less densely populated areas have access to the benefits of electric vehicles. But we can't just leave this up to chance. New York State must take strong, decisive action to facilitate the development of the infrastructure needed to support the expected rise in EV adoption. One effective approach would be to implement market-based solutions like a clean fuel standard, which has been mentioned a number of times by previous speakers. This program has worked in other states, specifically on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. It's been in place in provinces like British Columbia, and I believe it has been fully implemented in Canada. And in California, for example, their low-carbon fuel standard has driven significant investments in their EV charging infrastructure by requiring the largest transportation sector emitters to offset their emissions. This has resulted in a credit system that has facilitated the investment in the infrastructure needed for their charging infrastructure. It's also essential that we focus on actually building this infrastructure. Upgrading rest stops along the Thruway, the Northway, and other transit hubs to accelerate charging stations is a good start, but many of these locations will need significant electrical upgrades to support high-speed chargers, especially for medium and heavy-duty vehicles. New York needs to assess the best sites for installing charging stations, identify where grid improvements are needed, and estimate the costs involved. Collaborating with utility companies will be key to make this happen, and the state agencies must work with utilities to explore how to build out charging infrastructure at critical locations like rest stops and fleet depots. And I hope this will lead to more comprehensive electrical roadmap soon. At the League, we know that transitioning to zero-emission transportation systems is no small feat and will face challenges along the way. But there are clear actions we can take now to set us on the right path by implementing proven, effective policies. New York can build a strong foundation for cleaner, more sustainable transportation future. With the right commitment and planning, we can create a greener, healthier New York for generations to come. Thank you for allowing me to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.